It is truly an honor for me to be working with a group of incredibly dedicated and hardworking people who understand that none of us will get better unless all of us get better. That's the reality. None of us will get better unless all of us get better. It's not about our individual, it's about the collective, and that is the work of Healthy Gen. So, Dr. McAfee, I remember well the first time we met, and you said earlier you do too, but I really don't think you do. So it was January 2014. We were in DC at the Association for Maternal Child Health Programs, also known as AMCHIP. And maybe you don't remember me because there were hundreds of people there. So I wouldn't expect you to remember me, however you will. Anyway, you were the keynote. You were the keynote like you are today. My colleague Sheila Capistani and I we were in the back and we were just like, oh my God, who is he? He's so good looking. We've got to talk to him. We got to figure out a way to talk to him. We were so excited that at the end, I just rushed to the stage. Now, this is the part where you're going to remember me, because I'm sure this doesn't happen very often. So I made sure I got your full attention, not just a brief smile or glance. That wasn't going to work for me. No, I secured eye contact, and we had some serious eye contact going on. And I did that, and I asked you to come off the stage and have a brief conversation with me, and that is actually how we met. And during that very brief conversation, we found out that you were coming to Seattle. And so we were very excited, and we met with you somewhere down here at one of these hotels. You were speaking at a Head Start conference, and we met in a bar and, had a brief conversation. So fast forward to 2017. We here at Healthy Gen are planning this conference, and we're like, we need ideas for keynotes. And I'm like, well, I know someone. I'm like, his name is Dr. Michael McAfee. Thank God for Gmail Archive, because I thought, how am I going to 3 years later ensure that this man remembers me when I reach out to him? So lo and behold, that email where I reminded you that I asked you to come off the stage, that was in my Gmail archive. So I asked if you would be able to join our conference and be a keynote, and once again, you obliged me, and I thank you for that. Dr. Michael McAfee is the president of PolicyLink, a national research and action institute advancing economic and social equity by lifting up what works. PolicyLink is a national leader in building cradle-to-career systems to ensure that children and youth in our nation's most distressed communities have a pathway to the middle class. Dr. Michael joined PolicyLink in 2011 as the director of the Promised Neighborhoods Initiative. He is an accomplished leader who's about the business of equity. As a result of Dr. McAfee's advocacy, brilliance, and strategic leadership, in 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act was authorized, making the Promised Neighborhoods programs a permanent federal program. Thank you for doing that prior to the 2016 election. I don't know if y'all get that, but thank you very much. Dr. McAfee believes that every American deserves access to opportunities that give them a fair shot at succeeding in life. Among his many accomplishments, he's an Aspen Institute Idea Scholar, graduate of Harvard University's Executive Program in Public Management, and served in our United States Army. Let's give it up for that. If you would like to know more about all of his vast accomplishments, please read his bio in our program or visit the PolicyLink website. Dr. McAfee, we thank you for agreeing to join us, and we are excited about what we're going to hear today. So without further ado, I'll let you back up on this stage. Friends, please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael McAfee as he comes to share with us.
This is, I will always remember this introduction. Wow. First of all, thank you all for having me today. I wanted to spend some time talking to you today a little bit about hope and share with you some things that I'm seeing across the country that give me hope. When I was thinking about this, when I was thinking about what to say, a lot of fancy stuff came to mind. But I want to set the fancy stuff aside for a moment. And I just want to talk to you about how you show up. Because I think how we show up as individuals is probably one of the most important things we can do right now. And lately, I've been holding a lot of anger and contempt. And I've been holding a lot of anger and contempt for what I saw happen in the election and what actually got rewarded. And without getting political, what I got really frustrated by was, in so many cases when I reflect back, how spineless we've been in this sector. And what I mean by that is, as a person of color, I'm always fascinated when other people's pain gets lifted up, as if no one else was ever in pain. And so to watch that happen over the last year really frustrated me, because I was like, wow, here we go again, dividing the nation in a way that doesn't need to be divided. But as I thought about it, and I replayed all of the times that I've spoken over the last couple of years, something always comes to mind. I can't tell you how many times I've gone someplace and people have said, don't talk about equity. We've done that. Don't talk about those poor folks. We've done that. And what they were basically saying is, they were denying their people. That's what they were doing. But we saw an election where folks were front and center at owning a population. They didn't own the entire population. They owned a population. Whether they're going to do anything for them or not is besides the point. They called it out, they lifted up their pain, and they were unapologetic about it. And I was like, wow, that's what we should be doing. But we should be doing it for all of the folks living in this country. And so what I want to share with you about hope is a couple of ways in which I'm choosing to take up my leadership journey, because I have to start with me instead of looking externally. And the first thing I want you to think about is, I know for me, oppressed people are really resilient. Oppressed people are really resilient. If I want to look at hope, all I got to do is look at my family, go back to the neighborhood that I'm from folks who may not live in those spaces. They may not think hope exists there, but it does. And so one of the things about this moment coming out of that environment that is important for me to remember is that I was actually prepared for this moment because I don't fear pain. I lived it. And for many of you in this room, you've lived it as well. And so I want you to remind yourselves of this fact that you know what it's like to struggle. You know how beautiful it can be to struggle. You know how gut-wrenching hard it can be to struggle. But most important, if you're sitting in this room, you know how to overcome it. And that's what's needed in this moment, for us not to be consumed by hopelessness. And the way that we not get consumed by hopelessness is to hold an interest bigger than ourselves. And what I'm asking you to hold is a population. And I want you to get clear about calling out the number so that then you can get clear about owning it. When I talk about holding the interest of a population, I'm talking about the 100 million folks living at 200% of poverty in America. It's a whole lot of people. That's nearly a third of the country. But when you own a population, something really powerful happens. It means a lot of the things that I used to do, I can't do anymore because they're irrelevant. When you hold the interest of a population, and then you declare a result that you want to have for that population, you will actually be reborn. Your eyes will become open. Your senses will get heightened again. You'll be right back in the middle of struggle, because the struggle now is, How do you have relevance every day? How many of you all came to this work wanting to make a difference? How many of y'all know people dying in their cubicle? Talent is hell, but dying in their cubicles. How many people do you know who think simply publishing documents and holding convenings is a result? It's not, folks. And at a place like PolicyLink where you actually don't sit on the ground, it could become intoxicating because you can do that. You can fly around and you can do all that, but that's not the work. But what can be the work is for us inside these institutions to transform them so that they actually hold the interest of an entire population. That 100 million isn't just my population anymore, it's PolicyLink's population. And imagine the stress on an organization when it goes from saying, you know what, we're rocking it, we put equity on the map and we're doing this and we're doing that, and you know what, it's not good enough. Now we're going to call out the population. We were already helping folks within that population, but now we're going to actually call it out. And now we're going to also say that we want to accomplish 3 things in the world. We want to have a just economy, we want to have healthy communities of opportunity, and we want to have a just society. And we're going to put indicators behind those, and we're going to actually measure our march toward that. That is immensely scary. And it's scary for one powerful reason. You have to abandon yourself to the strengths of others. When you own population accountability, you can no longer do it yourself. So even if you don't like process, even if you don't like collaboration, which I can't stand it, you have to do it. You have to do it because that's what the work requires. And that's what I want you all to think about right now. What's your population? What result are you really trying to advance in the world? Because if you don't know it, you're actually not doing the work. You may be doing good work. But I was talking yesterday about the difference between charity and transformation. And I want you to try to think about always being clear about the conversations you are in. Are you in a charity conversation where we're just going to do good work and charity has its place? But this moment is about charity plus transformation, folks. It is about us redesigning a society that works for all. And every time I say that, I see folks on, I would say on the progressive side of the house, always kind of bristle a little bit. They always want to start asking me 1,000 questions like, how can you do that? Well, isn't that impossible? Isn't that idealistic? Aren't you dreaming? And I always say to them, if you look at your opposition, they are getting population level impact every day. Every day. They're designing it out of communities every day. They're dealing with policy every day. And we look at them and we get mad when the reality is we're too afraid to take on the work. Come on, folks, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. This is our moment to design a society that works for all. The question is, will you do that work? No matter where you sit in the organization, will you do that work? And will you show up the right way, even when it's a consequence to you? Will you show up the right way, even when there's a consequence to you? And here's what I mean by that. I know a whole lot of folks who, when they're in the White House, they present one way. When they're in the hood, they present another way. And then when they're in spaces like this, they present another way. And I'm always wondering, wow, what a pain it must be to contort yourself, right? To really not be the authentic person you need to be to do the work. And I'm not talking about political savvy. Of course, we have to be savvy and all that. But their voice changes. What they care about changes. What they're advocating for changes. What they're fighting for changes. And I need you all to think about one thing today, folks. What will you go to the wall for? What will you go to the wall for? One of the best gifts that happened to me around 1999 was that I got fired after being, I would say, one of those privileged black people who get to work in a white institution very young at a foundation. And I got there because I was trying to get out of poverty. And I decided that after working in a warehouse and working at Sprint and selling life insurance and working at Wendy's and Burger King and Red Lobster that I was going to just go for it. I just had a daughter, wasn't married to her mom, was trying not to become a statistic, and I decided I'm going to go for it. So I quit, decided I was going to start a $20 million foundation to seed innovations in education, and opened up the Cranes magazine. Because one thing about being in the hood is you can develop some good hustle skills. And I could sniff out money and power. And so I pulled out that Cranes magazine with the 100 most influential in it, and it said, Father Thomas Savage, power player in Kansas City. Joanne Collins, power player in Kansas City. I cold called them and said, hey, I want you to serve on my board. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to raise this $20 million. They knew I was not going to do that, but they took me under their wing. They showed me how you do philanthropy. They showed me how you lead civically. So if you had to come to Kansas City in 1999, I would have been an up-and-coming star simply because of my proximity to money and power. So imagine being in your 20s and you have more access to Don and Adele Hall, the owners of Hallmark Cards, Bill Esri at that time, who was the CEO of Sprint, because they're always at the community foundation. And I'm the only black male there. They never hired a black man before. And as I got comfortable there, my voice started emerging. And as my voice started emerging, folks started to describe me as angry. Because they didn't know how to experience that energy. They sent me to anger management. I talked to a woman named Dr. Dottie Fanninsteel for a year. We talked about her daughter. We'd go to the sessions, we'd talk about her daughter and sit there. I always knew I would have to learn to navigate the world, but this was my first professional, real experience of learning how to navigate the space. We got through that, but I started asking questions about equity before I even knew what equity was. Around youth development. Would you put your children or grandchildren in youth development programs that perform this way? And I had the audacity to expect an answer. And so my board went silent on me. They loaned me out from the community foundation to turn a youth development intermediary around. I turn it around, the board goes silent because I'm asking about quality and accountability for those kids. And ultimately my board fired me. So at this point, I'm in Kansas City, I'm making $90,000 a year, I'm not 30 years old yet, and all I needed to do was be quiet. Folks, this is a story of hope, because I'm telling you something that is important. The most wonderful thing that happened to me in that moment is I had to choose. I had to choose who was my population. Was it me? Because I could have just kept quiet and I could have stayed there. Or was it the people? And I've always decided I'm going to go out with the people. And my voice is going to be authentic with the people no matter where I'm at. And I'm telling you this story because it's a story of hope, because when you are a bad MF as you know you are, people can't stop you. And I'm telling you that story because I packed up my U-Haul, put my car on the back of it and drove to DC, started doing my doctorate, got a fellowship with Harvard and HUD, and then I ended up in Chicago. Today I'm friends with all those people again. Now I'm telling you that story. Now all my colleagues who came up with me, who played it safe, who had a more, I would say, a more appealing effect on people. They're not having the same impact I'm having on a whole lot of metrics. They're not making the money I make. They're not having the impact that I'm having. They're not being constantly in this privilege of having the gift to be in service to huge numbers of populations. And that's what we started off saying we wanted to do if we got out of poverty. That's what we said we wanted to do. And somewhere along the lines, a lot of my friends settled because they didn't want to fight. Or maybe they wanted to fight, but they thought that it was okay to lie to yourself and be something that you weren't. And folks, one of the things I've decided is I'm not going to be somebody else's identity. I'm going to be mine. Because that's what this moment needs. Folks who will fight. Folks who actually are not afraid to take a punch. Folks who can look you in your eye and say, my people deserve the same thing as everybody else. Whether you're in the White House, Congress, set of private donors, or in the hood. I want my Constitution to be consistent, and I'm asking you today, is your Constitution consistent? Because if it is, you will give people hope. You will give people a chance to fight harder. And I'm going to give you one last story about when you show up right, how it can change stuff even when you can't control it. When I came to PolicyLink to run the Promised Neighborhoods Institute, you heard about the final outcome. We got Promised Neighborhoods secured. More than $1 billion has gone to communities now. A new round of funding is getting ready to go out right now. We did that in this hostile political environment. But here's what happened. When I showed up, the work of an intermediary is to just do webinars, write papers, hold convenings, provide some units of BSTA. And we said, no, that's not what we're going to do, because that's actually not in service of a result. So we said the first thing we got to do is join, folks. The first thing we got to do is join, meaning we're only going to measure our success by how a site makes progress on the 10 results and 15 indicators in Promised Neighborhoods. Now think about that for a moment. We don't get to control whether sites do good or bad. But to link your fate with someone else and say, you know what, there's only one standard. Are we making progress moving from the baseline? That's the standard. That is the work for this moment, folks. And now the question is simply, what's our contribution? So our contribution was to say, if we read Voices from the Field 3, we know where the field has been. How do we now bring discipline to our work so we can increase the probability of getting the impact that we want? We did a couple of things. We introduced results-based accountability into our system. Folks said, Department of Education had their legal counsel say, you can't talk about discipline execution. Well, hell, you just said in the notice that we should use data for learning, continuous improvement, and shared accountability. This sector uses all the right language and then follows it up with pathetic practice. You go look at everything that we say, you would think that we are running the most tightest ships in the world. But we're not, because we've learned how to parrot language instead of execute it. And what happened 2 years in is that Senator Klein issued an audit of Promised Neighborhoods trying to kill it. When the GAO came out, what they saw this change. They saw folks actually using this discipline. They saw folks talking about populations. They saw folks not getting $30 million to work with 200 people, but asking themselves, how do I take $30 million and serve entire populations? That was a shift. For folks to say, I'm not just going to run a grants program, but I'm going to try to actually transform a community. GAO saw this stuff, it blew their mind. They didn't even issue the report publicly. We took the report and issued it publicly because were lifting up all the things that I'm telling you in here. My culpability in malpractice would have been to have known better, that we needed discipline, that we needed a disciplined, evidence-based approach from moving from talk to action, that there was population work to be done, that we were ready to hold greater complexity in crafting the right mix of solutions. To have not done that and had settled on the fact that I could have got by doing webinars and writing papers and describing phenomena in the field would have meant that we would have been vulnerable when Senator Klein would have came out and we would have lost Promised Neighborhoods. And while we would have still had our jobs, think about the billions of dollars that would not be going into some of the highest areas of concentrated poverty in the nation. That's what it would have been lost, folks. So I'm telling you that story because hope has to be manifested in you first. Hope has to be manifested in your ability to walk through this world knowing what the heck it is you want to do, what change you want. And you've got to choose to not make any excuses for it, because that's when you get awake. I'm awake right now because I'm extremely vulnerable. I'm extremely vulnerable because every day I got to link my fate with folks who don't have to listen to me. I'm only as good as the value that I bring. And that's the sweet space to be in. When you can be of service because you're only mining the opportunity for the value that you can bring and contribute, what a place to be. So as we think about hope, don't think of it as something separate from yourself. Remind yourself how you got here. Remind yourself of that strength inside you. Ask yourself when you're going to let it manifest again. And for some of you in this room, it may mean that you have to move out of the job you're in, out of the organization you're in, away from the people that are around you. I had to leave my comfortable job at HUD in Chicago. You know, you get a good government job, you can be there for life. And I had it. And I was thinking, wow, I'm getting ready to be 40, and is this what I want? Is this as good as it's going to get in terms of impact? And I had to choose again. And it's wonderful if you got a partner that will make it hard for you to turn back. My wife had found an article that my mother had of me when I was in my 20s talking about all this revolution in Kansas City, and it was in a book. And I'm real OCD, so the book was sitting someplace it was not supposed to be, so I was putting it back, and the picture fell out, and I'm looking at myself, looking at this article, and I was like, wow, here I get to choose again. I could stay here at HUD. I've got my wife, we got property, I got a nice security with my income, but that ain't the work. So we packed up and we moved back to the unstable world of nonprofits in San Francisco. And today we go from director to being the president of this beautiful gift that is PolicyLink in 6 years. That's the work, folks. And I'm telling you this story of hope because all along the way I had a chance to be afraid of hope. The very thing that I was working for, it was being presented and I had to choose. And all along the way, if I had made a different choice, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't be able to be in this moment and having impact at a time when our people need courageous leaders more than ever. I'd be sitting at HUD, not being able to have any impact at all. It's not a critique of HUD. It's just in that place, I can't do the work. And I'm telling you that story because some people gave me powerful gifts. They opened doors for me. They fired me. Others opened up more doors. And most importantly, some folks made space for me to be who I am. Most importantly, people made space, like Angela Glover Blackwell at PolicyLink, made space for me to be who I am. And right now, what this world needs, what our organizations need, is for you to create space for folks to be who they need to be in service of the 100 million. This is a hopeful moment for me. It's a hopeful moment because I don't fear the moment that we're in. I know our people are gonna be all right. And the truth be told, most of us weren't helping them anyway. You know, the people that I know still talk about jobs, still talk about housing, no matter how sexy our frameworks get, know how many exotic our conferences get? The folks I know still say, I don't have a job. I can't drink my water. I can't afford rent. There's no good child care. There's lead in the community. So folks, don't fixate on Trump. Fixate on the work that we hadn't been doing for many years for that. Trump is a manifestation of the lack of institutional quality all across the political spectrum. And when I talk about the crisis of institutional quality, I'm talking about the crisis of men and women able to submit themselves to being in service to the people that they needed and to bust through the barriers to make stuff happen for them. That's the fight. Stop wearing your progressivism like it's a fashion statement. Do the work. Do the work. You're not going to change anything by how many t-shirts you wear, how many fancy slogans you do, quite frankly, even how many marches you go to if you don't vote. You know, it's all nice activity, but I call it work avoidance. I call it work avoidance because people get really ginned up for nothing. And your adversary doesn't fear it anymore because they know that it's feckless. Your adversary doesn't fear it because they know it's feckless. So if you want to generate hope, get clear about the results that you're declaring. Get clear about the population you want to be in service of. And then join with others to create this magnificent obsession around moving from the baseline year in and year out. And there's going to be some years we're not going to make progress, and that's okay. That's the work. But I guarantee you one thing, you'll be able to lie down in your bed at night and you'll be able to ask the question I always ask myself, am I operating at the capacity of my God-given abilities? That's the question. You've been given some powerful gifts for a reason. Let them out, folks. Unleash them. And if you can't do it where you're sitting, leave. Leave. Hope is going to be about what you manifest in this world. And there's too many brothers and sisters that need us to manifest a whole lot right now. So what I invite you to think about as you think about the science of hope is to think about it's already in you. It's pumping through your veins. And if this is going to be a powerful movement, I need you to straighten your back up. I need you to get your heart to be right. And I need you to walk in every room owning your people. I need you to walk in every room owning your people. Even people you didn't know were your people. That 100 million has some of everything in it, and I got to own it all, not just black folks. Somebody at PolicyLink asked me the other day as I closed, they said, you know, and I'm angry about this, but I'm trying to show you a moment where I got to still manifest hope. I'm angry that all of a sudden now white working class is like on the table. When I've struggled in communities where I'm like, in many cases, I know white working class folks don't even want to be associated with people of color in the context of the work that I'm talking about. But the reality is, nonetheless, they're 26% of that 100 million. And we better find a way to connect. Now, the frustration and the contempt becomes, as a person of color, I'm like, I'm tired of always having to reach out. Some of y'all can understand that. I'm tired of always having to be the one when I didn't deny you in the first place. I didn't say you couldn't be a part of it. You chose that. But regardless of how we got here, the work avoidance is for me not to own a contribution. And so I'm trying to share with you my own struggle, because when you hold the 100 million, you'll work through it. It will force you to say, you know what, it's great that you feel that way, Michael, but get over it. Because the work is this. And that's what it means for all of us right now. We may not understand each other. And while we're still not understanding each other, we can still be in service to each other. That's hope. That's hope, folks. So I am not afraid of this moment. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about how it's going to bring us together. I'm excited how it's going to allow us to hold all sorts of intersectionalities. And I want you to think about holding them. Hold your population. Get clear about your results. Get clear about how you're going to measure progress. And ultimately, get crystal clear about your contribution. And don't go to another meeting until you can declare that. Because this is how fanatical we have to get about doing the work. If you don't see the path forward, let it go. If we do that, we will create a society that will realize the potential and promise of equity, just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. So thank you. I'm going to take a couple questions.